What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of AutisHim, Black Fathers and Autism. I'm here with my brothers next to me, Lonnie, Nick, Trav. Listen, today we got a special one. I know I say that all the time, man, but this is really, really special. We got one of our brothers today, man. I mean, I can't really say enough about him, but we're just going to go into a little bit about his backstory. DeAndre, known as Dre, Whitt, is a senior director of strategic partners at Clarivate, where he works with some of the world's largest healthcare and life sciences organizations. He also is the founder of the Minority Health Partners, a health education platform that focuses on addressing disparities in the underserved communities. As a father of young two sons with autism, DeAndre brings both his professional and deeply personal perspective to conversations about advocacy, support, navigating resources for families. He brings his corporate and expertise with his lived experience to help others better understand and support the autism community. Please, 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 please put your hands together for our brother DeAndre, aka Dre Whitt. Give it up for him, everybody.
Great day.
Dre, man, we are honored to have you here, man. I know this is going to be a great episode. But listen, man, I'm just going to ask you because we are all fathers here. We all have young kids on the spectrum. I think where I want to start with, because we're probably going to go to a lot of different places, man. I want to know when you first found out about your kids, your boys to be specific, that they were diagnosed with autism, you and your wife. What was going through your head, man? Like, what were you thinking? What was the feelings like in the room? Whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, man, it was fear, because when you get that diagnosis and you start to see that your kids are not like the other kids, you don't know what that exactly means. Because when I was growing up back in the 1900s, as the kids call it, we only saw the severe case of autism. Because at the time, we didn't know that the diagnostic criteria is different and all that stuff. All I thought is when they say your child has autism, you're thinking that it is the most severe case that you can think of, the self-harming, nonverbal. So I was afraid that might, be my kid. So that was the biggest thing that I had, man, just fear, uncertainty. And I wasn't necessarily worried as much about me. I was worried about everybody else. So my wife, like, what does this mean for my kid and all those different things.
Okay. So with that uncertainty, man, and we talk about it a lot in the group, and for all the people that don't know, we have a fathers group that we all kind of met each other through. But with that uncertainty, man, let me ask you this, because I think, all of us kind of went through something very similar. Because I talk about when I found out that my son was on the spectrum, I went through all the emotions. I went through a roller coaster of emotions. Was there ever a time in your mind where you felt like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. So, and I know you've talked about this of like, I need to try to figure out and reach out to other people that know about this so I can do what's best for my family. Like, did that automatically go through your mind at first too? Or was it just like, you know what, I'm kind of stuck in mud. I need to sit here and try to figure this out. Like, what happened? Like, did you ever go through that, I guess?
Yeah. So for me, it was a little bit different having a clinical background and working in healthcare and life sciences for my whole career. So I was able to kind of pivot a little bit into that of a researcher to kind of just like any other condition or, disease or pathology, you go right into research because I'm always kind of a solution-based kind of person. So we have an issue. I need to learn everything I can about it. And that will inform me on how to best start to get treatment and understand. So I wanted to immediately become an expert. So I threw myself into it. And maybe that helped me from going through all the emotions like most people do, because I was so wrapped up in it at the time trying to learn everything about autism. So I don't know if that's good or bad because I never really went through that full range of emotions like a lot of people do. I just started learning everything I could about it because I wanted to know what the people would not tell me. I wanted to know for myself. So that's the first thing I did.
That's a great point. So being a father of boys just like myself, for those listening, maybe they're curious about just resources, considering you're in the healthcare field. Where should they go? Should it be them reading books? Should it be them searching the internet? What's the best way to go about resources so that you can help your family and your children?
Yeah. So for me, I did all the things, right? So it was the books, it was every article. So one place I really, went to Google. So if I were step one going into Google today, I started to type in what is autism? So, because you can't start to look up all these, step 2 and step 3 before you understand step 1. So I didn't just want to think of autism in the fact of, oh, I saw a kid that had autism when I was in high school. I wanted to know what is autism, how it works, what it is, what it isn't. So a lot of people, for example, back in my day, we used to use the R word, the mentally retardation word. And so I had to make sure that I understood that it was not that, and it is, a neurologically developmental kind of disorder, but it's not a disease. It's not something that people catch. It's a different neurotype. So I started to Google what is autism. And when you start Googling what is autism, then you learn about the different organizations and who does the educating, the different academic centers that study it. So one of the first places I looked up was, Duke. Duke does a lot of autism research. Johns Hopkins does a lot of autism research. So I started to throw myself into kind of like, I guess, the WH questions, like who studies autism and who's the authority on it? What are they saying about it? Where they're located? And why does my child have autism? So that's more so what I wanted to learn about. And outside of that, I really just threw myself into taking what I knew and then just pouring it into my child. Because if you're telling me that it's kind of a neurodevelopmental disorder and that with treatment, these kids can grow, and my child is 2 years old, I just wanted to pour resources into him as fast as I could. So I just threw myself headfirst into what are the different treatments. So it's ABA, speech. And I know people have a certain feeling about ABA, but I threw them right to ABA and I said, what's the maximum amount of ABA I can give my kid? What's the maximum amount of speech? OT, PT, any service I can get, I maxed out on everything. And people thought it was a little extreme, but based on the research I had, it was like, hey, give your child as much as they can handle. They're young. They have no expectations. We're the ones that have the fears and the expectations. And so that's kind of what I did.
Yeah, I like that. And I have a follow-up question to that if you guys don't mind. So
go ahead, sir.
we're all married men as well. So one thing we always want to talk about is partnership with our wives, which at times can be, a coin flip. So I'm curious, as a married man yourself, when it came to the diagnosis of your children, how did you and your wife come together to say, hey, this is how we have to come together as a team to ensure that we ensure they get the resources and the best life possible to help them maneuver through life? How did you guys handle that together?
You know what? I wish it was a fairy tale answer like that, but it wasn't.
Okay.
For me, it was consoling my wife because I knew the level of grief that my wife was going through, and I don't ever pretend to know what it's like to carry a baby and, you carry them for 9 months and they come from your body. And then when they're born, they're this perfect baby, all their fingers, all their toes, they're smiling, and nice little brown baby with a head full of hair. And everything is paradise, right? Because you're this newly married couple and you have this baby, and I had a son. So I was happy. And so I would joke with her all the time. Like, she'd be minding her business and I'd be like, bring me my son, stuff like that. So it was kind of this fairy tale for like the first year or so. And then after the first year, you start to notice these things that are different and you get a little scared, right? And so it's a slow, gradually thing where you're asking questions, and you can see as you're learning more and you're having more concerns, you see her fear grow. And that fear leads to doubt, depression, and all those different things. So it really wasn't a let's get together as a team kind of thing. It was me making sure that she was okay, because this beautiful baby boy that came from her body is not going to be what she imagined him to be in her head. And so I had to make sure that I was taking care of her and taking care of him. And so I went into caregiver mode more than anything. So in addition to just being a provider and being a husband, you had to become a caretaker for everybody and make sure they're cool and put your emotions to the side, because everybody is dependent on you. And so that's what I did.
So,
Nice.
so my question, when you're managing and handling all of these things with your children, your wife, autism in the community, what do you do for self-care and making sure that your cup is full enough to continue to pour out into your family, into your community, into your kids?
I wish I had time for specific activities. I really don't. Probably the only thing that I have that I do is a gym membership. I had a gym membership a long time ago that was like $15 and I never let it go. So sometimes it was just being able just to go over there, go to the gym, get on the treadmill and go for a walk. So it's probably the most self-care activity I get the luxury of right now. But I guess what guides me in absence of that is just understanding the purpose of it all. Because, whether it is having a child with autism or being a good husband or just, us being part of what I call the sandwich generation because our parents are getting older. And then we also have our kids we're caring for too, and we're sandwiched in the middle. So I just try to always tie it to a sense of purpose. And that's what makes me get up and work hard every day. Meaning that everything that we're doing as men, as fathers, as husbands, is for something greater than ourselves. We can't look for some kind of gratification. You might not always, it's a thankless job. You might not always get the trophies and the thank yous and all that. But if you understand what the end game looks like in your mind, that's what gets you through those hard times, even when, you don't have the luxury of self-care. Because I wish I could tell you, I go to massages and I play tennis and I play golf. I don't get to do none of that. Every blue moon, maybe once or twice a year, I'll get, some kind of relief, whether it's, my fraternity's having something or, or a business trip where I can just go by myself and I can just get a hotel room and just sleep in a hotel. But that's really all I get. But I'm always encouraged and refreshed by the purpose, because as I look at the progress that my sons have made, that makes me say, okay, it's going to be worth it in the end. And one day I will be able to take a breather when we get them to a certain point and they're more self-sufficient. So not the perfect answer. I don't really have that self-care stuff, but hopefully one day it'll come.
And one more question, if I can permit. Now, we talked about the self-care part. I wanted to talk to the other end of the spectrum. I didn't want to lead with this question first. What is the most challenging thing for you, or is it the time commitment? Is it what you've already explained, or is it something else, the most challenging aspect of your life currently, having children on the spectrum and dealing with everything? What do you find is the most challenging?
Yeah, the most challenging thing, man, is, the world that we're bringing them into. Already having Black boys already, that's a challenge already, right? And so you have to teach your Black boys how to navigate this world that's not necessarily set up for them to succeed and set up for them to thrive. So they already kind of have their strike against them. And then you have a child that is a little bit different than everybody else. And that's something else that you have to add on top of it. So that's probably the toughest thing, because every day you're looking out in the world and you know how it is. And so as you're teaching your children and you're, trying to equip them with everything they need, you always are preparing for this tough world they're going to go into. So it's, if you're somewhere and your child is stimming, or your child has a meltdown in the airport, all those different things, that's the hardest part for me. That, and making sure that my wife doesn't necessarily fall into that sadness of, I have 2 children on the autism spectrum and my children are not like everybody else. Other kids are going to soccer and basketball camp and my kids are going to ABA, or my kids are going to speech. So it's more so everybody else. Me, I've accepted it. This is what I've been given. These are my children. They're a precious gift. I love them. I can deal with that. It's all the external factors that are pushing down on you as a Black father, a father of Black boys, that they're going to come into a world and then having something else added on top of it. That's the toughest part.
Dre, you've talked about this a lot in our group, man. And I have a lot of respect for everybody on this call, but I really respect you for this. When I first met you and we were just, talking, one of the things you would bring up is reaching out to people that are on the spectrum, right? Like doing that research, like, because I never would have thought of that. Like when I first found out my son got diagnosed, like I'm online, I'm reading books, I'm doing things like that, but I never thought about like, hey, it'd probably be a good idea to reach out to somebody that's actually on the spectrum, right? Come on, Tyrone, figure it out. But you actually like do that. You've done that, and I want to know, was that hard for you to do? Like, were you just like, nah, I got to, figure this out, so I need help? Like, was that, was there a little bit of intimidation there? Like, what even made you think of that?
Well, it's a couple things. I think if you were to see kind of my friend group in real life, I have a lot of friends that are different already anyway. So most of my friend group, you probably would say, are neurodivergent people anyway, and so my friends are recording artists, music producers, like just people that think differently every single day of their life, or they're nerds, or they're doctors. So the people I hang around all the time are these different thinking people anyway. So I'm used to existing in a world where you thrive and you feel better of interacting with people that think differently. So that was a strength that I already had. Even some of my best friends, they all were like that. I think if you were to look back, at them now, a couple of them are deceased, but if you were to look back on them now, we would diagnose them as children as having ADHD or some other kind of condition. And those were my friends because they were some of the most loyal people I've ever met. So I think that was one part of it. I was already used to dealing with people that think different and hear music different and see things different. Already used to that, and I thrived on that. The other part is in clinical research, and if you ever get an opportunity to work with like a clinical research trial or a pharmaceutical company, anything that has to do with kind of that clinical space, one thing that's very powerful is patient testimonials, right? So let's say, for example, all 5 of us started a pharmaceutical or medical device company today, and we came up with this treatment to treat something, name your disease, to treat broken leg syndrome or whatever it is. The best, most impactful information we can get is from somebody that tried our solution for broken leg syndrome and said, hey, I had both my legs broke and now I can run faster than Usain Bolt. Like, that would be the most powerful thing. So it was my instinct to reach out to people who already have been dealing with this. And then they, can tell me, okay, I know they tell you this in the clinic, but this is what it's like to live as me. So that's one. And then with all my different thinking friends, they connected me with people in the autism community anyway. So quick story, this must have been, 5 or 6 years ago, I went to a friend's house for Friendsgiving. A friend of mine, she cooks like a 5-star chef, so I wasn't going to miss out. I was going to go get some food. And when I was there talking to everybody, it was a lady in the corner who had made the greens, and I'm just talking to her, oh, these greens slap, oh my goodness. And I'm just talking back and forth to her. But I'm not noticing on the TV, they have Hamilton playing. And all these people know Hamilton word for word, verbatim. And I'm like, I couldn't possibly do that. And so later on in the night, one of my friends asked me like, hey, you ain't been out, you ain't been around. And I'm talking to her like, hey, the kids, what's going on with them, autism, blah, blah, blah. And this girl walks up to me later and says, oh, so I heard both your sons are on the spectrum. And I'm like, what? Who are you? She's like, yeah, I'm autistic too. It was a lady who I've been talking to who made the greens, who knew every word for Hamilton. And this is something she probably watched a million times over and over, special interest type stuff. Man, I almost boohooed in a party, yo. Like almost like just broke down crying because, I had not been able to just be face-to-face talking to somebody and see somebody that's autistic, that's extremely smart, accomplished in her career, and all the things that I hope my child would be. And here I am just sitting up there talking to her. And then there was another person. I'm trying to think if I invited my buddy John Ellison on one of our father's calls. I mean, just, I think he's the one that liked to use profanity. I think one of our early calls he had. Yeah, but to meet a guy like that can just pick up a musical instrument and be like, oh, that looks nice, and just start playing it. And he's an encyclopedia. So that was something I was interested in. I like music. So I talk to him all the time, and he can tell you pretty much every history of every music. That's his special interest. But it's almost like how we're talking now. And so it gave me so much hope and encouragement that our kids are going to be okay. They just got to grow. They just got to find their tribe. They just got to feel supported. And so they started giving me all these different affirmations and started giving me all this information. And I was like, you know what? I got it. So meeting people, I guess to answer your question, meeting people was a little bit natural because I have friends like that, part training because of my career. But it was just such a blessing to meet people like that because people walking around every day and they're neurodivergent, and we just think that everybody's like cooped up in the house, and they're like, no, they get married, they have kids, they do all this stuff. So it was just a big blessing, man, to meet people like that.
Nice.
I was thinking about so far, what has been the biggest sort of surprise or thing you've learned that's made the biggest difference? The other day, my son's getting into video games. He has this, certain interest, but we started playing Tetris and Mario Brothers. I grew up on those games, and we got this switch too. He playing the old school games, but he loves Mario Brothers. And for a moment, I was like, I thought I was getting emotional. I grew up playing Mario Brothers with my cousins and whatnot. My mom loved Mario Brothers, and so I had imagined doing things with him sooner, but he's making progress. We're doing things later. You know what I mean? And so we keep having these discoveries. Let me try this Mario Bros. Let me try Tetris. So I've been having a good time with him doing things now. And so he loves basketball all of a sudden now. He's trying to think he's Jordan, think he LeBron. What have been sort of some surprises or things over time that you've discovered with your kids?
Yeah, man. Actually, I had a big surprise today. I think that the biggest thing that surprised me is their level of awareness now as they grow. Because for so long, it was just like they're in their own world. I think that's kind of even the root word of autism, right? Like in their own world. And so now my kids are starting to ask questions to let me know that they observe things that are going on around them, and we can have conversations about that. So even this morning, my oldest son, he goes to like a day camp for autistic children. And so I'm driving him to camp this morning, and there's a stoplight when you get off the highway that we normally wait at, and it's a homeless guy that normally sitting there with a sign. I never talked to him about it, never brought it up or anything like that. But today he goes, "Where's the homeless guy?" I'm like, what? What are you talking about? When he's pointing, he's like, "He's not here." And I'm like, "Yeah, but like we never talked about that. What do you know about homelessness?" And he's like, "Yeah, homelessness means you don't have a house, you don't have a home." So you like, what do you take? And just the fact that he observed and never said anything about it. Notice that as a homeless guy, always notice that the guy was standing there, and notice that the guy was homeless. Homeless means he doesn't have a home. And then what we got to do to help homeless people because they don't have a home. And so it's always those little surprises like that that I get unexpectedly. That and the level of intelligence that I'm impressed by, of like how they can drill down on something, and if they can get through those kind of brain blocks that they have for being on the spectrum, how quickly they can take in information and learn and excel at things, man. So it's a blessing to see that. Even like in swimming last week with my kid, I was just taping him because it was the last day of swimming, but just to see how he picked up the stuff that I was like, oh, he's not going to learn it that fast. And he's like, yeah, he's putting his hands together and swimming forward. And then he knows how to turn on his back and float and all that. So it's always just those learnings, I think, that shocks me, that I don't expect them to pick up that quick. And they're like, oh, got it. So that's probably it.
Dre, I got like a 2-part question. I'm going to piggyback off what Lonnie was saying. The first question is, could you speak to fathers out there that have kids on the spectrum? What are some of the things that they can do, or some of the things that, you do in order to like connect with your kids? Because, for example, kind of going off what Lonnie was saying, I was trying to figure out what that was with my son, because my son is into a lot of different stuff. And so, growing up, I was in the cartoons, I was a hooper, I was in the video games. But, my son's in the video games, and that's cool, but we really wasn't connecting like that. And so now, we found a lot of things to connect on. So, I'm in the anime. He's getting into anime now. One of my biggest animes growing up. I think if you was black, you was in the Dragon Ball Z. If you was in the anime, like you just was. Like that's what it was. It's like the black anime.
Yeah,
but anyway,
Uno, easily.
Yeah, that's the Uno, right? So like now he's going back and he's like watching all the episodes that I grew up on, right? And so now, even on YouTube, like there's these creators out there, and shout out to RDC, man. I don't know if anybody know who RDC is, but RDC is a group of young kids, and they're not even young kids, they adults. But I think all of them are black except for maybe a couple of them, but they're of color. And they do a lot of things in the anime space. They play video games. They do a lot of streaming and stuff, right? And so my son is he's starting to get into a little bit of scary stuff, like not too scary, but like kids scary. And they play like certain games and stuff. Like one of the games they play is Poppy Playtime, which is like a scary game for kids. And so he was like, Dad, I don't want to watch it by myself. Is it okay if I watch it with you? And I was like, yeah. And so because of that, I was already in the RDC because they just hilarious. They do skits and everything. But because of them, we were able to sit down and watch something and connect and laugh. And we had a great time. And we still watch some of their stuff. So shout out to RDC, man. Like I don't know, they probably don't recognize what they're doing, like bringing the father and son together to relate to something that's great. But going back to the question, Dre, what are some of the things that you do to connect with your kids, and what advice do you have for fathers out there that are trying to connect to their kids?
Yeah, and this is something I actually got from talking to autistic people, right? Like actually autistic adults, and perusing like online groups where autistic adults have the floor to speak. Find out what their interests are and follow them. and support them in whatever the interest is, no matter how, how weird it might. So, for example, if you don't know anything about anime and you see your kid latch on to anime, dive into it with them. If they don't know what they like, put a lot of things around for them to try. So, as a father, what I would do is just like all types of things, whether it be food, whether it be places that we went and all that, I would just try stuff out on them and see what they gravitated towards. And then when they gravitated toward it, I would just encourage them and try to get into it as well. So, like one thing that I did was buy musical instruments and have it around the house. Just don't force them. I didn't put them in the lessons, anything. I just have it around the house. So they walk in the basement and it's a big keyboard there, and it's just there. And so one day I came downstairs. He's taught himself how to play a few songs. He's taught himself how to record and all those different things. I don't know if that will be his special interest, but I support that. Hey, let me hear you play that. Let me see this. Or I sit next to him and then we try to peck around and those type of things. So I just try to do that with all their interests. Another thing I did is, and I guess kind of working in the tech healthcare space, you see a lot of people like the Bill Gates story, right? Oh, my parents bought me my first computer. Michael Dell, my parents bought me my first computer. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that you have as much technology at your disposal that you want, because that technology is going to be your window to the world. So you can figure out what your interests are. So that's, another way that like they would log on. Like they're on some MIT site called Sketch by MIT. I don't know if you've ever heard of it before, but it's like, okay, you guys are familiar with the type of STEM websites and those kind of things for MIT. Cool. Let me get on here and let me see what y'all creating. Let me see. So that's more so what I do. I more so chase them. I put stuff out there to see what they like, but I just put it out there and kind of see what they gravitate toward. And so I think that any father that wants to find a way to bond with their kids, just do that. Like let them kind of lead the way instead of telling them, because I think if you try to tell them what they like and they don't like it, they feel defeated. So my kid might not be a basketballer, and that's okay. I don't want to put him in basketball and then he feels like he failed because he can't do what dad wants him to do. But if his sport is tennis and golf and he leads the way and we end up playing tennis or golf, he feels a little bit more affirmed by doing that, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a great point. I literally was just talking to my son, picking him up from summer camp today, just saying like, hey, we just got our fall catalog for the community, which it has like activities like taekwondo, karate, basketball, soccer, all that stuff. Yes, the sports dad in me wants to say, oh, I'm signing you up for soccer. You about to hoop easily. But like Dre said, it's important to give them options. Let them actually grow to love what they do, have multiple bags. Like growing up as a kid, I did multiple things myself. It's cool to be well-rounded. So no, I totally agree to like let them kind of gravitate towards something when it comes to really just trying to like grow an interest in general. So no, that's great advice, Dre.
Yeah, I mean, you have to realize they're still kids, and most kids are just trying to figure out the world around them. It's just that we have kids that maybe see the world a little bit differently, or their senses are a little bit heightened. They hear things louder, they see things brighter, but they're still kids who are just trying to find their way, and we have to create that environment for them to be able to do that in a safe and protected manner, to figure out what they like or who their friends are going to be and all those type of things. So some of the things kind of translate, and so I try to treat them as normal as possible in that way. If they try something and they don't like it, like when my oldest son was 5, when Dawson was 5, we tried karate. He gave it his best shot. We tried it and he learned some things, but it wasn't for him. But we tried it. And that was cool. Like, okay, let's try something else. You like water? Water is great for autistic kids. All right, well, swimming is what we're going to do. You like it? And when it comes to swimming, I never have to ask him to do anything related to it. Hey, we got swimming today, and we're going to go kind of late tonight. We don't go to the pool until 7, so we're going to be home at 8:30. He cool with that. But he found his interest, and I kind of supported that. And that's what you would do for any kid, but it's just especially in the space where they have a little bit more of a time finding out what that is. We have to support them a little bit more.
I think I'm going to ask my last question for the interview. And I guess I want to center it more around fathers and African American fathers, Dre. We know that there are African American fathers that are in the lives of their children, but in a lot of different spaces and places, and in the autistic space, we don't see as many African American fathers. So, piggybacking a little bit off of what Todd's question was, what do you tell the African American fathers specifically centered around the fatherhood, centered around being African American? what advice, tips, tricks, thoughts you would want to give fathers to either help engage them in being more connected? I know we talked about that, or just to get into the space, or what to encourage them. What would you prefer African American fathers who have children on the spectrum know, do, show to promote a healthier relationship with their child or a healthier lifestyle in general?
Yeah. So, and this is going to be a little bit of a controversial statement, but I tell fathers who are in the positions that we're in and they're a little unsure, they're a little afraid. I tell them that they are the master key to everything. And I know that, we celebrate mothers. We love our mothers. We exalt our mothers. But I tell fathers they are the key ingredient. And I think that if you look at some of the research, it bears that out. There's a stark difference between an autistic child raised in a home where it's just the mother trying to do it by herself versus when the father is there, especially when you have a Black boy. So I try to help them understand that, first of all, it's your responsibility. It's one of the biggest responsibilities that you will ever have in your life. And your involvement in what you do has a direct impact on the outcome of how your child will turn out. So I know that you're afraid. I know you want to run away. I know you want to ignore it and all those things. You can't. And that's just me straight talk from one father to another. So that's kind of what I tell them. Then once I get past that, I tell them that autism is not a bad word. It's always been around. It's ubiquitous. It's among us. It's everywhere. It's just you don't have the glasses to see it yet. But once you immerse yourself in the way that you should, you'll start walking around and you'll see kids that are autistic. You'll see adults that are autistic. So it's all around you. So if you embrace that, then you'll have a different view on it as well. So don't look at it as some kind of failure that you had, something bad that you did to your child or anything like that. And then the third part I tell them is that they have to make sure that they take care of the wife as well, because she is not going to be able to take it the way that you ingest it. And that's a stereotype. I know that's a broad generalization, but you're going to be able to kind of handle it emotionally a little bit different because the baby came from you, but it came out of her body. So I always try to reinforce that as well. But the big takeaway and the big theme is just the mindset. There's an old saying, and I hope I don't butcher it. What does it say? It isn't how things look, it's how you look at things. Meaning that the situation is what it is. It's factual. It is what it is. However, how you look at it kind of changes how you deal with it and the outcome. So for me, I could say, woe is me. I have 2 children on the autism spectrum. And it's likely my fault because I have neurodivergent people on my side of the family. And I was an older dad. I was 38 years old, and so all the risk factors and things like that, genetically, I could probably put the blame on myself and I could feel sorry for myself. Or I could say, you know what? I have these beautiful gifted children and they're unique and they're a gift to me and they're going to be a gift to the world. And my job as a father is to prepare them as best they can. So when that time comes, everybody else sees the gift that they are. And that's just the mindset that I try to put into fathers, just how important it is. And this is fatherhood overall, but especially in children like ours. You are the master key and your mindset drives everything. People are looking to you for leadership. They're looking for you for guidance. They're looking to you for strength. And so you have to take that cross, and it's a heavy cross. We all drag it. It's a heavy cross, but it's one that we must bear. And if we do it right, then so many people will be blessed by the work that we do. So that's kind of the talk I give fathers.
What you said reminded me of going to martial arts with my son. There was another kid in class. He's ADHD. Every class, he all over the place. He won't listen. He's not. His dad came to one class. That kid I could not recognize him. He was in line. He was focused. He was on point. And just because his dad ain't say nothing to that child. He was like, I know what it is. And people sometimes just showing up can help your kid get in line. But listen, that dude his dad he did not even say anything to him. He was in order. So
we treat these kids like nobody's home up here, and it is. So even if it wasn't from a disciplinary standpoint, his father being there, sometimes a boy just want to impress his dad.
Yeah.
And show his dad, I'm running around all this time and you think I'm not paying attention. I'm soaking in everything and I know what's going on. So when you come and it's time for me to show up, it's no different than an athlete, right? Practice. He was Allen Iverson in all those other sessions, but when his father showed up, And it was time for the game. He knew he had to produce, and he did what he had to do, to use that sports analogy. My son's the same way. He was the autistic child in kindergarten until he had to go up in front of that whole crowd and do the presentation for everybody at his graduation. Wait, the autistic kid did that? Well, part of his autism is well, I better not use profanity, but he ain't scared of none of you Bernie Maccas. You know what I'm saying? Like he can get, he can get up in front of everybody, he can present, and that's a fear that he doesn't have, because the way his brain works, he don't know he should be scared. Or when he was in second grade last year, he was the only boy that made principal's honor roll with a 4.0. He doesn't have that fear. So we take those things that are deficits or so-called deficits, and we use them as strengths. He ain't scared of nothing. So, it's somebody home, and we need to just remind ourselves of that all the time. Just because they process the information differently, they hear it or sometimes react to it differently, is there. And fathers need to know that,
Absolutely. Dre, you could definitely cuss on here. Sometimes you just got to say that shit how it is. So I want my last question for you, brother, and it's kind of piggybacking off what Nick had asked. I want to ask you about keeping it on fathers, because we've talked about connection. We've talked about, listening to our children. When you're talking to Black fathers, or what advice do you have for Black fathers when it comes to disciplinary, right? Because we all experience it. I think we all had similar upbringings. We didn't have all the same experiences, but definitely similar, right? Of how we was raised. And Nick talks about this all the time. We talk about it all the time on the podcast and the group, discipline versus diagnosis. So, being a Black father, the way you were raised, how do you handle discipline in your household, knowing that, and at least in our experiences, the way that we was raised just doesn't work, right? It may work in some cases, but it doesn't work all the time. So what would you tell fathers? What advice would you give them for that?
Yeah, the thing I try to do with my kids, I don't know if this applies to everybody, but I just try to be extremely locked in and connected with my kids, so I understand their brains, I understand their minds, I understand what their levers are. So, sometimes in order to change a behavior, we always think of things in terms of punishment, but sometimes it's not punishment. Sometimes it's a reward. Sometimes it's, how you frame things. So I just try to be as locked in as possible to know my child, so I know when it's the right hand of strength or the left hand of mercy, so to speak, where, hey, like, this is autism. He's just having a meltdown right now and he needs his time, versus, no, he think he's getting over. And I heard an old story once from, I don't know if y'all used to watch like the MSNBC lock up all the prison shows and all that. And they even talked about what made a good guard. And the guard said, I always treat them with respect, and I give them what I can give them. But if it's something I can't, I don't. And I try to, and I'm not saying that my kids are prisoners or I'm a prison guard. I'm not saying that, but it was just a profound quote for me. So sometimes I could be very rigid on rules, but is it really necessary? So for example, at bedtime is at 8:30 and they're finishing a episode of Dragon Ball Z and it's 5 minutes left. Do you really need to be that hard ass on your child because you're enforcing rules? Or can you say, you know what, tomorrow's Friday anyway, I can give you that 5 minutes. I can give you a little bit. And you give them that. But then there's other times where you got to go. You got to be somewhere on time. There's something that's expected from them. Then you hold the line. And they learn to kind of understand that give and take of, when dad can give me something, he give it to me. But when he's not budging, I'm going to go ahead and do what he says do. But it's me being locked into them and their personalities and their behaviors and kind of learning how to make those things tick. And so that's kind of how that's how it guides me and how I do that.
Dre, where can people follow you at? What social media platforms are you on? Like, what's next for you?
Yeah, man, I'm on every social media platform at Minority Health Partners. So minority_health_partners. You can find me. And so I haven't really done my deep dive on autism yet. I'm kind of like keeping the gun really loaded because I might start bringing in the big guns like y'all to start helping me do some content around that. But what you guys probably already know and the overall Black community appreciates is that all this stuff is new to us. You guys are pioneers of what you're doing. It's 2025 and you guys are the first group of Black men stepping out like this and doing podcasts like this and doing father support groups. So we're pioneers in this space. And so I just try to educate everybody on all these things because I think that knowledge is what's going to drive us into where we get next. And that's not just autism. That's ADHD. That's diabetes. That's high blood pressure. So that's kind of like my mission, man, just to take our community and bring them where they need to go as far as their health. Other than that, if you allow me 1 second, I guess like a closing statement here.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I'll say this kind of to encourage Black fathers. Both times I found out that my son was on the spectrum was at a hard period of my life, extremely hard, dark period of my life. The first time when my oldest son was diagnosed, I was at a job. I was making a career transition. I was working for Johnson & Johnson at the time, and they had a force reduction. And I got laid off from Johnson & Johnson and decided to make a career pivot and no longer work in hospitals anymore. I was upset that the territory that I left behind, the guy came and picked it up after they laid me off, and he became the top guy, number one, and got all the credit for it. And I'm trying to make a pivot into this consulting healthcare tech space. And I'm having a hard time because I have to retrain my brain to think differently. You're not in a hospital anymore. The company I work for, I had a boss that was looking to go up the ladder anyway. So he kill you off if he had to kill himself. And I have this child and I'm trying to talk to him and I'm saying, hey, I'm getting concerned about my child. My child's not speaking, he's not doing the things he should do. And he's showing it off like, oh man, kids do that. They have speech delays. What are you worried about or whatever? And so I had a real hard time because I ended up getting put on a pimp at that job. Like saying pretty much like you resign or we will force you to resign at that job right when I found out my son was diagnosed. So it was tough. And so then my wife and I, she's pregnant at the time with our second child. When our first child, we get our first diagnosis. And then I'm also switching jobs. And so I go to the next company. And don't get me wrong, it helped my experience. The company I was going to was building out my resume, so it wasn't a total loss. But it was really hard in the fact that my next boss after that pretty much told me, hey, man, like, I understand you got a child with autism. I got a cousin's mother, other brother who, everybody say that, like cousin's mother, other brother has autism. But my responsibility is to the business. So if you got things that you have to do for your child, I understand it, but you might have to find some other place to work. Mm-hmm. And I was listen, to this day, it took me a long time to kind of let that go because how upset I was for him, because it wasn't like I was playing around on the job. I did what I need to do, but I was getting calls from the school. I'm trying to get places for him, places to get speech, OT. I'm scrambling because my child has this diagnosis and I'm trying to figure everything out. And I didn't get the level of empathy that I expected. And so I ended up leaving that company as well. So it was both times that, I figured out that my sons were diagnosed. I was in some real dark, bad places of my life. But the next position I got after that, totally cool. All your children on the spectrum, hell, you in tech. Half these kids are neurodivergent anyway to work here. And it was a very open and welcoming place. So I say all that to say is it might not be the right time when you have your children or when your children are diagnosed or, when you're learning about autism. However, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But what you have to do as a father is keep putting one foot in front of the other, even if you don't know what the next step or the next item brings. You still have to just say, I'm going to get up tomorrow and try again. I'm going to spend more time with my child. I'm going to study. I'm going to hug them a little tighter. And if you do those things, I can promise you that things will work out in the end. Even if it doesn't look like how you thought it would look in your head, it will work out. So I guess that's kind of my final statement there. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be like an ugly NFL game, but a win is a win. And even if you got to win ugly, a win is a win. So if you do the right things, you will win.
Man, we got to give it up. That was beautiful. Beautiful, man. Hey, one more time, man. Where can people find you at?
Minority_health_partners on all the platforms. Instagram, Facebook, X, of course, fan base, Black-owned platform, Spill, and X, Blue Sky, all of them. You go for Minority Health Partners, you'll find me there.
All right, Dre, again, man, thank you for coming. We really appreciate you. This is AutisHim, Black Fathers and Autism, and we out.
My brothers.
I love you, Heartworm.